the pouring of the tea and then the drinking of said tea. We're slamming. It's gonna be a lot of slamming today, guys. You're gonna hear me talk a bunch about slamming stuff. Step up. Well, I meant to say step one there, but I said step up. I'm a dorkwad. Step one, let's slam some of this. Let's glarf some of this tea with some rooibos. Alpine Punch. That's good tea. I'm not a big fan of David's tea, mostly because it's a um just a like a franchise, like a big corporate. It feels very corporate-y as a tea store. And there's a local tea store here in Victoria that I really like to support called Special Teas. And Special Teas is hilarious because you go in and it's just you can tell two hey Lucy, you can tell that two Ukrainian women run it, and one's the mom, one's the daughter, and it's like there's a counter, there's no music playing, and there is just rows of tins of tea. They don't look nice, it's all the same tea tin. Thank you, Lucy. And they really make great tea. Like their tea is legit, and it feels like you're getting tea straight from the old world into your teapot, and it just feels very authentic. It feels authentic to the experience I would want to have in a tea shop. And David's tea is not that. David's tea is like lively, and the staff are all young, and they're pushing a tea latte on me when I buy tea, and it's expensive, and their teas are delicious. It's not a criticism of their teas. It's not even a criticism of David's tea or their model. It's more just that like I really appreciate the the sort of like fuck you. Here's our tea store. If you come in, it's going to be dead quiet. They're just doing their thing. Irene is the woman's name, and I can't remember her mom's name, but I really appreciate that. And if we want to keep getting things like that, I really believe we have to support that sort of stuff. So I make both Bay and I really we drink a lot of tea in this house, and I make a point of buying my tea from there. And David's tea makes Alpine Punch, which is a really good rooibos. So it's a long-winded way of describing the tea that's being drunk, which is probably why everyone just dropped off immediately. They're like, I was telling the stupid tea stories. We'll come back in a bit. That's fine. It's good tea though. Grimby just tried to get in, but I've blocked. That's a right there. That's a little meditation push cushion against the door, so he's thwarted. So, oh, I see why though. His pumpkin is in here. That wouldn't be fair for me to keep that from him. So we'll fair game. There we go. Put that over there. Put that back there. Come back over here. Sit down. Hey, Robin Howe. Hey, David Medina. David. I bet it's pronounced David. No coaching guests today. This is an intimate tea time, just me and you. I'm going to give an update on a bunch of stuff that's been up in my life, what I've been up to, how things are shifting, how the intensive is going. If you guys have questions or bring comments, then I'll address those too. Kind of a live AMA kind of thing. Um, the most embarrassing thing about AMAs is when no one asks you anything. I don't know if any of you guys have ever tried something like that. I tried that a few times. Like I was like, oh yeah, Quora, I'll put out like ask me anything. No one had anything. No one was curious about me or wanted answers to my questions. So I guess it's a position of privilege to have people willing to volunteer questions and ask you that sort of stuff. Okay, well, let's see. What are we heading into? The next couple of weeks, I'll be offline for the most part because we're heading to Palm Springs for the tennis down at Indian Wells, which I'm quite excited about. I've never been a tennis player. Squash was always my sport. Let's move this window so I'm closer to looking at the camera. There you go. That feels better. I don't like looking down there. That feels weird to me. Now it feels like I'm in the right spot. So squash has always been more my sport, and but growing up, ever since I was a kid, we'd watch tennis. When the Grand Slam tennis was being played, we'd have that on the TV, and so it's pretty cool to go and get to watch it with my parents. I'm really excited about that. Unfortunately, we'll be going to Austin before the actual championship matches start, so we won't get to see any of the finals. We'll see sort of like after the qualifiers, like the early matches right after the qualifiers. because then we go to Austin for South by Southwest, where we'll be for about a week. Um, it's an interesting time to be traveling, obviously, because coronavirus is in the zeitgeist. We're all worried about it. It's definitely on our minds. I'm kind of like, should we be doing this? Apparently, Babe is saying there'll be some protests that are happening in Austin because people feel like you're putting the city at risk by continuing to hold this festival. And a bunch of companies have pulled out. Facebook won't be there. Google won't be there. So it'll be interesting to see how the technical um, exhibition, festival, whatever actually plays out, and whether or not it does. And the interesting thing about this stuff is that when things are down, that's when the opportunity to like get in and steal some of the market is. So I'm curious to see if some companies are trying to take advantage of this and like, hey, right on, we're not competing with Facebook right now. We have way more visibility. And will they show up from that place and try to make the most of it? Or will they follow suit and choose to not put people at risk? Or, how is that going to go? Um, Hey, Adam, I saw that Nashville, Adam is a good friend of mine who used to live in Victoria. We grew up in Victoria together and now lives in Nashville. And I was wondering, did those tornadoes affect you? Because I just saw that there was a bunch of deaths, like 150, I think, that happened through tornadoes. That's pretty scary stuff. Anyhow, so tomorrow we leave bright and early, and we'll be gone for a while. We'll return home, and during that time, I'll mostly be offline. But there's a lot of conversations I'm really excited about having, so I'll still be doing some work. And the nice thing about the nature of our jobs is that we can take them on the road and do work with them or not. We get to kind of pick and choose. Oh my goodness, 10 minutes away. Wow, I imagine that was scary. That'd be quite scary to me. I've never really had any interaction with a tornado. Here in Victoria, the main fear, I guess, of natural disasters would be an earthquake, and it's kind of like, well, when it happens, we're going to be destroyed. We'll just all sink into the water because we're, I guess, right on a fault line, and so we do our best to prepare for it, but it's not quite the same as a tornado where that seems to happen on a semi-regular basis. Okay, so let's talk about creating the next intensive. That's been a large part of the conversation if you follow anything I write or listen to Get Lit, which I'll talk a bit about. If you even have been watching any of these videos that we do on Friday, I've been talking a lot about the intensive. And last year, right about this time is when we finally secured a venue and began enrolling people, which was really tough because we only gave people sort of 10 weeks to say yes to traveling from wherever they were to Victoria, making travel plans, getting everything arranged. It's not a great amount of time. In addition, Bay and I were doing videos. So we'd do a video once every week or so and share like, hey, here's how this is going. This is what's up for us. This is what we're present to. This is kind of how we're feeling in the moment. Are we discouraged? Are we encouraged? Et cetera, et cetera. So things are going a little different this year. The first is that at this point, we've got, I think, 22 confirmed guests. So that means we have about 13 spaces left, which is pretty awesome. And I'm really committed to like enrolling, and I'm kind of at the point where this is the part where I kind of go, okay, I've done my best. I've done my best. I've gotten 21 people to say yes. Cool, Robin. Yeah, I'd love any questions like that. I'm kind of like, I've done my best to enroll people. I've gotten as many as I can. I did good. And now I kind of want to, there's like a part of me that's like, all right, I did everything I can think of and I don't want to keep going. I don't want to go any further, which is a common place I think a lot of us get to, where we're committed to like this unpredictable result and we've done what we know to do. And then it's like, okay, I did what I know to do. Like, what more do you want from me? I did what there is to do. I can't blame myself for not getting there. I did my best. I tried. Pat ourselves on the back, go play video games, smoke a joint, drink a beer, hang out with friends, get a massage, whatever your tonic is. We did our best. Now it's time to go and relax. And I'm really committed to not stopping there. I really want to run through the finish line. And so I was getting supported with this by my coach. That's what I brought. Like, hey, I noticed this part of me wants to just lay off the gas, but I'm committed to something greater than that. I'm really committed to filling that room. And so it's cool. I'm noticing when I sit down and be with the fear, and there's a bunch of fear showing up. Like there's a bunch of people that's felt really great to invite. Much better. Good morning, Chrissy. Thank you. Appreciate that. What would you call it? I think this is mulberry. It looks a little brighter on camera than it is over here. I'm calling it mulberry. Um, so uh, let me just have a sip of tea and regain my train of thought. Compliments throwing me off, this acknowledgement stuff. Yeah, I'm really committed to not stopping at the reasonable place to stopping. And as I do that, I sitting on the call with my coach, I started to see like some other places like, well, I could reach out to people that went to law school with me. It's been almost a decade since I've talked to them. I'm sure our lives have gone, maybe they've diverged or braided or who knows. And I'm sure that there's something available for some of those people. I could reach out to people that were in conversations with me about working together and then chose out. I could reach out to former clients. I could reach out to people that I've not talked to but just have seen around town. Um, and underneath a lot of that is like this fear. And the flavor of that fear is I'm afraid of kind of showing up like hat in hand, like a little bit like lower than them and hey, can you help me out? I'm afraid of being perceived as not having it all figured out. I'm afraid of that's a hilarious one, right? I'm afraid of like being given those responses that people sometimes give, like it's basically being patronized. The response, if you've ever invited people to something like this, sometimes you get this response that's like, oh, no, but I'm sure that your event's going to be great and don't worry. And even if they mean that from the like fullest of open hearts, it often I receive that, meaning it's my lens that I'm taking on, but I can receive that through the lens of like, oh, they're patting me on the head. Don't you worry, Adam, you're going to be fine. And boy, that drives up like a bunch of fear and then anger and like, fuck you. I know I don't need you to tell me that I'm going to be fine. I know this. So all of that stuff kind of showing up, and it's rather than go through that, it's easier to be like, hey, I did good. I did better than last year. We've already got, I don't know what the numbers, six more people than last year. And hey, Cliff, and instead of stopping there, really being my commitment. And what that does is it forces me to take on the fear. And that's the reason for commitment. What commitment does is it has us not stop at the place it would be convenient to get off the train and instead to go all the way through it. So that's kind of like what's there right now. We're just getting a new. It's cool because last year I didn't really want to invite people and open up registration until we had a venue. This year I'm like, fuck it. Fuck it. We're going to find a venue anyhow. I'm committed to this event happening one way or the other. I'm going to trust I can work it out. So we don't yet have a venue. We've got a place lined up. The dates are free. We're just working out sort of refreshments and signing the papers. But in truth, we don't yet have a venue, and we've got 21 people registered so far. So the place we do have has a gorgeous view of the harbor. It's closer to more food options, which we're excited about. A lot of beautiful walking nearby, et cetera, et cetera. So it really speaks to how beautiful Victoria is, this place. So I'm really excited about that. What else can I share about this? Right. Two other things, one which will lead into the other. So the first is that I want to share like the longer term vision that I have for this and talk about predictable and possible. So where most of us operate from, there's going to be a distinction here, which I'm going to credit to accomplishment coaching. Most of us operate in our lives from a place of predict and manage. So we look at where our life currently is. Maybe I'll go over here. We look at where our life, like, here's how my life currently looks. Here's what's currently demanding my time. Thus, from that, what results can I predict I'll be able to create with a stretch 1 year from now or whatever. And then we manage our life and the circumstances of our life to create what we predict. And so this is why people tend to they tend to they create in their life the possibility, whatever's new, whatever they're creating in their life expands incrementally at the edges of their comfort zone. So it's not, hey, Sechko, it's not a bad thing. It's just this is the way it tends to be. We operate from a predict and managed life, a life that is predicted. Here's where I can get to from here. And some of the ways you might hear this are like, well, what's reasonable? Or what is a reasonable thing for me to think of? Or, well, what can the market bear me charging? Or these sort of questions. Um, and so from that predict and manage kind of approach, like if someone wanted to make a living teaching yoga, they would probably look at the market and be like, well, the average yoga class is about $20. I could probably at most get 15 people in my class on my first year. And they're basically looking from these things that are held as truths. Where can I end up? Okay, that's the goal I'll set for myself. I think I can probably make 60K a year. Might have to work a bit on weekends, blah, blah, blah. The brilliant distinction that accomplishment coaching works a lot with and has created a lot. Sachko, Chrissy, Sachko, I like this. Yeah, little interaction in the comments. Plus an opportunity for me to talk like a dork. The distinction accomplishment coaching created and invites people to step into, as do Bay and I, is one of declare and fulfill. So while predict and manage is a future, it's aiming towards a future that is a function of what the present currently contains. Declare and fulfill is entirely disregarding the present. It's way out in the field of possibility. So you're letting go of how things currently look and how they've gone in the past. And you're really sitting in the question of like, what do I really want to create? What would be a really amazing result for myself? Never mind right now how I get there. Never mind what the market can bear or anything like that. And I want to be clear here that like the conversation about what the market can bear on one hand is totally like a valid conversation. And on the other hand is a total, like all it does is kill your possibility because there are people charging thousands of dollars for private yoga lessons. And you could say, well, but they're an exception. It doesn't matter. That's the whole point of this is that what we're really trying to create, most of us as an well, not most of us, but people that are engaged in the kind of conversations you guys and I are engaged in, we're trying to create exceptional lives, not lives that are following the rule. And so that requires a willingness to declare and fulfill. We often see this when people want to hire a coach, where they're kind of looking at their life, they're looking at what's there, and they're like, can I predictably work with this coach? Yes, in 4 years' time. And then that's the goal they make. Rather than like, no, the declaration I'm going to make is I'm going to work with this person in 4 months. And I got to figure out how I'm going to create that now. I might have to get supported. I might have to create something different. So when you create that declaration, it demands something different from you. You have to show up differently. You can't do what you've already been doing. You can't just do the same predictable things you've done for the past 6 years, hoping that's going to give you this new result. Hey, Brad, the result in and of its nature is unpredictable, and thus you cannot use your predictable patterns to get there. The cool thing about that is it demands you shift who you're being. You have to show up in your life differently to create that result. So we've got declare and fulfill, predict and manage. I cover this distinction a little bit on the podcast episode I just finished, which I think comes out in about 4 weeks' time. So that if you're wanting to like, oh, I'd like to hear this again, I want a refresher. I can't remember I think it's episode 97, but it's 5 distinctions to help you lead. So you can check that one out. There's that and 4 other distinctions. So there's the predictable result that we could be aiming for the intensive, which is like 35 people this year, next year, probably 50, the following year, maybe 75, the following year, maybe 95. That would be like a predictable path. The vision I have for this work is far greater than that. It's not that people come and get an incremental shift in this work with us. It's that they come and have a transformation, meaning all of what was predictable is swept off the table, not so that you can no longer access it. It's always there, but more because now you've got this space, this room, and this transformed way of being. to create something far greater than what was predictable for yourself. Bad news is we got to play that same game. And so the it's called the short to midterm vision, the 3 years out vision I have for this work is that we're doing 2 intensives a year with 150 people at each intensive. That's fucking crazy. Hey, Lindsay, that's fucking crazy. Like from where we are currently, which is maybe we'll hit 30. My commitment is we hit 35, and maybe we will for this event. To go from there to basically running this work for 300 people, 150 2 times a year in 3 years' time, that is an exponential shift. You cannot get from here to there with just a linear geometric progression. So first of all, I made this declaration with my coach, and I immediately got scared. I was like, "Oh my God, well, there's no way this is going to work. It's stupid, Rachel. What's even?" I mean, all Kablarney showed up, and she just sat with me and really got it. And like, yeah, I totally get it. You've created this result, and it's kind of scary, and you're kind of caught in the how. And she was just being in the conversation with me and supporting me to see, like, first, you don't have to figure out the how before you get clear on the what. In fact, as Bay often says, putting how before what turns what into but. Your vision becomes, well, I want to do that, but here's all the reasons why I can't. Hey, Morton, uh, we have a conversation to have, Morton. That is you and Marjo and I. I'd like to be in a phone call with you. Morton and I met, and his lovely wife in Rhythmia at the end of our medicine ceremony together. I very much want to talk to you guys. I'm glad you showed up. So putting how before what turns what into but, and then you're left with what but. And you don't want what but. It's gross. That's what my dog gets. So don't do it. That's as much for me as anyone. So I've got this clear what, 3 years hence, 2 intensives a year, 150 people at each one. And the other parts of that commitment, that vision, are that we create the same promise, that people leave that event different than they came in. Not like a different human being, but a deeper human being. There's more of their being available. So they've transformed into more of themselves, a deeper expression of who they are. And so it's not going to be enough for me to just be like, okay, I'll just turn on the ads, write the funnel, get a bunch of people in that room, do everything else the same. And yeah, 35, maybe I can stretch myself and get 50 people transformed. And then the rest get to watch it and they'll be inspired and blah, blah, blah. That's not the game that we're up to play. And so we really have to create things differently. And I'm not sure totally how to do that. Here's the final part of that, which is this is going to sort of lead itself into the conversation about enrollment. And so we were on a call with our leadership team today, sharing this vision and sharing we can't do it ourselves. Up until this point, the way that I've enrolled for the intensive is I sit down and I make a list of probably about 100 people that I'm inspired to invite, that have engaged with me in some way, that there's something I can see, some cool possibility I can see for us to be in the same room together and be playing this way, whatever it is. And then I send them a message and I say, hey, we're doing this event. It's amazing. I'm super excited about it. I thought about who I wanted to invite. You're one of those people. I would love to talk to you about it. And then if they want to have a conversation about it, we hop on the phone for an hour and I share what I see might be possible for them, help them see what they might see as possible, and just check in to see if this feels like something that they want. Is it a fit? And if not, no harm, no foul. And if yes, cool. How do we get you across the finish line? Some of you watching have already said yes, and maybe even been a part of this conversation with me. I can't do that for 150 people 2 times a year. I'll have no time for anything else. And so what's really cool is that's calling us to really begin creating a leadership team and causing their leadership. And part of what there is for us to do is to start having them enroll for this event. So that's an interesting thing. We're not paying them to do that. We're simply supporting them by developing their leadership, causing their leadership, and inviting them to play this game with us. And so that's ultimately enrollment. So I want to talk a little bit about what even is enrollment now that we're there, and I'll tie it back to this. But how we've walked our way there is I've got this insane vision that's quite terrifying for me. I'm clear that I can't just get there in a straight line from the path I'm on. If I keep, the slope of the curve, y equals mx plus b, that goes like this. And what we're committed to creating is like straight up there. So it's going to require an exponential shift. It's going to require some transformation. First, I hope that you listening can hear that's a declaration. There's no predictability about me creating those results. The predictable thing would be, yeah, in 3 years' time, we'll have 80 people at a one intensive, and it'd probably be closer to 75. That feels about manageable for me. And if that was the goal, we wouldn't really have to be doing much different. We just have to be doing what we're already doing a little better. So I really want to invite you to notice like just the act of declaring some kind of result and then fulfilling on it, as opposed to declaring a predictable result and managing your life to get there. The simple act of declaring it will cause something different for you to happen. I cannot stress that enough. It's part of the power of that distinction. Hello, Nick. Kalis. Ha ha ha. That was so clever of me. Not actually, but I liked it. Okay, so we were on a call this morning with our leadership team and we were sharing like, hey, one, we have this crazy vision. It's to create, like to have this kind of work have an impact. And there's a lot behind that vision. Part of it is that one of the things I see happening in the coaching profession at large is it's hard to find places where we can really be taken deep. And the reason is that's self-fulfilling. Meaning, because it's hard to find places where you're taken deep, what tends to exist is a lot of places talking about going deep while staying mostly on the surface. And so then you end up wherever you look, man, I really want to go deep. You find a place, oh, it looks like they're going deep, and you think they're talking about going deep, and you think therefore that you've gone deep, and then you turn around and try to provide that same thing to other people. And again, what you've been trained in is the being of talking about going deep while actually not getting to go that deep. So it has a naturally cascading kind of effect. And so what happens is the public at large tend to get a bit of, I wrote about this and called it hope fatigue. We tend to get a little disillusioned by the promise of transformation, leadership, coaching. It seems like most of what's out there is a lot of conversation about depth and transformation without any of the actual functioning of it, without any of the actual like, wow, this is really happening. And so what happens is people get disillusioned and then they turn away from coaching towards something different. You know what? I'm just going to take plant medicine. Nothing against plant medicine, by the way. I think there's deep work to be done there too. I just think it's often much more impactful when we pair that with some kind of ongoing support like coaching. More on that later on in this conversation we're in. Yeah, I'm with you, Karen. So it's self-fulfilling and we're left disillusioned and then we turn away from it and then people don't get the magic of coaching. And a lot of coaches end up disillusioned in the work too because they notice this. They might try to convince themselves that, yeah, no, stuff's happening. I just need to trust that. But I see it a lot where coaches also suffer from hope fatigue because they get kind of bored of their work because it's only going so deep and they can't seem to get down to what's really available. So I assert that's not what we're doing. And I get like I could just as easily be a part of this given how I've laid it out. So you got to either trust me or go along with my assertion or just stop watching. Those are your three options. So this is an event where we're not doing that. We're taking people really deep. And I want more of that in the world. I want more of the gift of coaching and transformational work out there because then we all benefit. The hallmark of transformation is not that your life changes, but that the lives of the people around you change. And so that's a really beautiful thing where like as you do your work, all boats rise. So I have a vested interest in you doing deep work. I have a vested interest in more of this getting out there into the world. So that's the vision we have for this. We can't do it on our own. I say and it requires support and we want more people to get the benefit of this. And so we've been talking with our leadership team, the people that are on it already. We have 2 more slots to fill. And we were sharing with them and really inviting, like, look, there's an opportunity for you to practice getting people present to the possibility in their lives and inviting them to this event as a conduit to create that. There's two ways you can approach this. You can approach it like, here I am being a sucker, helping Adam and Bay fill their event. I'm going to do this for Adam and Bay because I love Adam and Bay and I think their work's awesome and I want to help them win at their work. That is not very enrolling. And in fact, what's going to happen is if you stay in that work and get confronted, eventually you're going to start to resent Adam and Bay. Because why the fuck are you doing this work for them? Why are you putting up with the discomfort in this? Why? And so this is the point where we have to, Bay and I, but also the people in our leadership team have to shift the conversation to like, what's in it for you to play this? What is in it for us to support you in bringing people to this event and being in that conversation? And that's a different conversation for all of us. It's a different conversation for me because it means I'm letting go of being the only one to do it. And the funny thing about that is at first, long term, this allows me to cause more leadership and to leverage my being more. Because then I can cause the leadership of a team of people that are committed to the same thing we are and have them enroll. And from that place, it might be possible to create 150 people. I don't really know. I'm I'm doing my best. I'm in the unknown of it. I'm on the skinny branches. That's the long-term aim. The short term, though, is that this takes more energy from me. It takes more energy because I'm still doing some of the work myself. Hey, Emma. And it takes more energy because I have to devote time to be in those conversations and to support people and to trust that like longer term, we're raising their leadership so that they can then, blah, 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 blah. So the longer term game is not just that we have 150 people at the event. It's that we've created a team of leaders who not only enroll at the event, but then are also supporting and training and developing the next set of leaders to enroll people in the possibility of their lives and to create something big. So that's kind of the game that we're playing right now, which is a crazy game. It's really like fascinating. And I'll just share one more distinction that I'm present to as we create this. The one is that people hold. It's kind of like maybe a zero-sum game or like a bit of you and me kind of separation. So there's Adam and Bay's thing, and then there's your thing, which may be like, I want to build a coaching practice, or I want to create a conference that develops leadership, or I want to, I don't know, I want to develop this thing at my work. And I want to really increase our recruitment at work. I want to bring more people in. And inside this you, me kind of context, this box, there's a couple ways you can show up. One of them is, fuck, I'm doing this for, I'm over here. I'm doing this for Adam and Bay, and that's taking away from what I want to do. Fuck them. I'm going to do my thing. It's kind of disempowered, and it's not going to be too much fun. The other way inside this box of us versus them is I'm doing this, we're over here. I'm doing this for Adam and Bay, but I love them, so that's okay. The trouble is you're not benefiting yourself from that work, you're benefiting us, and you're doing it from the goodness of your heart, but it's still inside the same box. So it's like kind of the best it can be inside that box, sort of, until it stops being and you decide to say, fuck this and move off from it. And what we're really supporting people to create is a shift in perspective, to shatter this paradigmatic box altogether and help them really help them really see that there's a different way entirely to hold this, which is that there's only all of us. All there is enrolling people in the possibility of their lives and then seeing what structure, what support would help them from there. And from that place, there's no Adam and Bay. There's just how can we better be in the game of enrolling people in their lives? How can we better practice the game of helping people see possibility? How can we better play the game of making generous invitations to people and being unattached to how they receive it? And from that place, it doesn't matter if you're inviting them to our event, the intensive. It doesn't matter if you're inviting them to your event. It doesn't matter if you're inviting them to go and check out some ayahuasca ceremony that your shaman ran. Whatever it is just an opportunity for you to practice and to support people to step into the possibility that is available in their lives. That's a much, much broader, more powerful, more expansive context. So that's what we're kind of collectively creating, both Bay and I, which requires work on our part to be able to hold that context open, and then the people on our leadership team. Just going to read what you said here, Karen. Well, I burp into my fist, as you do. Karen says, I trust that the intensive will open participants up to doing deep work, and I'd love to hear about how we'll know whether we are talking about going deep versus being in depth. Hmm. Great question. I have to ask myself that. Those are my favorite questions. Like when you guys ask those things, it kind of plunges me outside of what I already know, right? Most of what I'm talking about here is what I already know. So how will we know the difference between talking about going deep versus being in depth? There's a few thoughts I have on that. Hey, Christina. Hey, Amy. So the first is, and it's not quite a cop out, like there's a lot of truth to it, but it's a little bit like there's a risk of it being like, well, just trust me, which is not entirely what I really I want to provide a better answer than that. But part of it is like, because Bay and I have been plunged into depth a lot and have been really held in rigorous containers where talking about depth was not, you couldn't get away with it. And this is a bit of the challenge is we need to find teachers who have been held, had their head held under the toilet a little bit in the toilet water. Sort of, okay, I get it, let me up. Then back we go. So that's the first part is that Bay and I have a lot underneath, a lot of ground under our feet and have done a lot of work with this. And if you're dubious, that's totally fine. That's really understandable. A great place to get a sense of that is to go and watch some of those videos of us coaching. Go and listen to Get Lit and check out some of the live coaching episodes we've got, and you'll just notice. I mean, even Karen, yours and my conversation is a great example of that, where there's sort of we played at the surface a little bit and then kind of dropped down, and so that's the first thing is trusting the work, the work of us and our leadership team to create that. The second thing is you'll know, how can I word this? So when we're talking about depth, we won't really know. It's really tough. Like our ego has a vested interest in convincing us, oh, we're doing the deep work right now. Oh, I'm going so deep. I'm going to share with everyone how deep I'm going. That's like our ego's job, because if it can convince you that you're doing the deep work or whatever you want to call it, I'm doing transformation, I'm being bold, whatever is important to you, if your ego can convince you to do that without having you risk the vulnerability of going deep, meaning if it can keep you safe, if it can keep you surface, but convince you that you're going deep, the ego is winning and it's doing its job perfectly. This is not to vilify your ego. This is your ego's job. And that's the ultimate, that's the very best result it can create, because then you're held under the illusion of going deep while actually not. So it's the best of both worlds. Oh, I'm going deep, so you're not going to look for more depth, and you get to stay safe, so you don't have to risk the vulnerability. So that's when we're in the conversation about depth, you can't know that. The difference is that when you're in your depth, you'll know because you'll feel terrible, or you'll feel a variety of things. Some of those things tend to be like a bunch of fear because you're in the unknown. So you'll have this experience like, I feel off. I feel bad. When we took our course with Werner Erhard down in Cancun this, I guess that was October, one of the things they said they give you like 6 billion pages to read. And then they also tell you this course is basically us reading slides as we go through the 6 billion pages we're giving you to read now. Read them anyhow. And the crazy thing is it works. It actually works that they just read these slides. Different conversation. So what one of the things they say is that often when you're confronting what's there for you to confront, when you're really in the conversation that is deep, you're left with a bit of an experience like something's not right here. And that's because you've got this wall of bricks that you've already put together. We all have that. We've got a consistent wall of bricks that we fit together that is kind of like the way the world is. And it contains all of our beliefs and all of how the world is fit together. And they're all neatly stacked. And then what we're doing when we take you deeper is we're giving you a new brick. And it's a brick that doesn't fit with your existing wall. And so you're going to kind of look at this brick and you're going to look at this wall and you're going to be like, well, this doesn't fit. This doesn't work. Something's wrong. And I can't remember who it was. It was a quote of someone, but they said, like, ultimately, job is to do violence to your existing beliefs. We got to knock that brick wall apart so you can then put it back together with this new brick. So you can create whatever the new belief is. So ultimately, the simplest way to know when you're actually in depth, as opposed to in a conversation about depth, is that the conversation in depth is going to feel really crappy. You're probably going to feel resistant. You're probably going to be able to point out why what the other person is saying is wrong. You might find yourself saying things like, well, I don't think it's actually quite the way you're saying it is. Like all of these things that we do to stay safe is going to show up. So ironically, the more convinced you are like that I'm in the depth, probably the less likely you are. And the more awkward, uncomfortable, whatever you feel is probably more reflective of you being in a real process that moves you through something. Now, I wouldn't suggest saying any of that, Karen, to people that you're like, I want to make an invitation to someone. I want them to be in this room with me. Because all of that's like sharing with someone like, hey, you're going to come to this room and you're going to feel awkward and you're going to know you're doing the good work because you're vomiting in a bucket. It seems to work for ayahuasca ceremony, but never, if all we heard about medicine ceremony was, yeah, it's horrible and I was violently ill for 8 hours we would not be inspired to go. So much more powerfully is instead of trying to think like, how do you know and how do you figure this out, is simply to like be in a conversation with someone about like, hey, what do you really want in your life? What's really like, if you could have anything you wanted and then have a conversation that takes them deeper than where they're answering the question at. So they'd be like, oh yeah, I want like a little more money and I want like a little bit more at my job. Yeah, great. So let's say we got you that, but then what else? What's the experience of life you're really creating or really craving? How would it be like, how do you want to wake up when you get up in the morning? How do you want to feel about that? How do you want to, so we really want to ask questions that open up possibility because that's going to really, that's what would have someone say yes to something that has the potential to be a little scary. It's scary to go deep. I think I'm answering that question, but I'd love like some feedback from anyone that's watching. Like, hey, is that kind of landing? Is there a different place for me to take that? Would you like to hear more about something? And Karen, question, and Amy, thanks for that feedback for Karen. Like, really love that question. I'm going to talk a little bit about the art of enrollment because that's live for me too. Evan's on this call. I don't think Kelly or Allison are. Evan's one of the members of our leadership team, and we had a call today to really support the art of enrollment. So the first distinction, this is another accomplishment coaching distinction I want to share, is I'm going to come to your question right after I lay this out, Robin, is that there's a distinction between attraction and enrollment. I'm going to talk about that in a sec. First, I just want to see what you asked, Robin. Super logistical, non-deep question. I'm enrolling my employer to pay for the course. What I want to submit in the request is strong alignment with leadership and coaching as the organization wants to take on more of a coaching and leadership lens in order to shift the organization. And how could I be a catalyst for this change? Love that. I get the deep inner piece. And can you speak a little bit about what you think those possible outcomes could be? And if you want to get back to me with this info, I'm cool with that too, in case, nope, I don't think that's derailing it at all. So I will give you, and really, I think, Karen, please ask your questions. And Robin, I trust other people have these questions too. Like, yeah, leadership sounds sexy. Transformation sounds cool. And everyone else is saying that word too. So I guess I should get along board with it. But what does that even mean, right? Like they just sort of sound like buzzwords at that point. So um, the first question I would want, like, these are some places that I might explore that. And then I'll share just my answer to the question. But if I was in your shoes, I would explore, like, well, where do I see an opportunity for more leadership? What might change at this organization if people were able to take more responsibility for the way things are going? That's one of the ways that leadership works, is we can own more. I, instead of pointing blame over there or flailing around on my sword and apologizing profusely but not really being able to take responsibility powerfully, if that was moved out of the way and shifted, what would change at the organization? How would things go differently? Would there be an impact on deadlines? What about projects? How about communication in your teams? So what we're doing here is we're sort of looking at, like, what are some of your complaints about the leadership of your current organization? Then what if those complaints shifted? What would that start to open up? So it's okay to start at complaint. We just don't want to stay too long there. So we've got complaints. Well, the problem with my organization is no one's willing to take responsibility. Great. So if that changed, if people started to be able to take more responsibility and you could model it, what might shift? Well, okay, so first of all, people would probably, I'm just going to start making this up, right? People would probably be more responsible for being on time. So be more punctuality. Okay, great. What would that difference that would make? Well, first of all, our meetings would be more efficient. And I guess probably we'd be less prone to miss deadlines. And when we did, we'd probably be more, like, I guess, powerful about it, which would probably create a better customer or client relationship. And that might build more integrity. And if we had more integrity, I could imagine, like, people would trust our brand more. So some of the things that I see possible are, like, we'd be more punctual. We would have, like, a much more powerful ability to be responsible for what's going on. I think we would really grow our integrity around our brand. And I think the relationships we have with our clients and our customers would become smoother and like just more trusting. So that's an example of taking. Now, I don't know if any of that's true for you. That's less the point. It's more starting from whatever you can see and then growing that seed into a tree of possibility. Let me know if that helps, Robin. Okay, so attraction, patty cake, attraction and enrollment. Attraction is where people see you or an organization or something and they're like, that person's awesome. I want to spend more time with them. So attraction tends to have a lot of inspiration around it. We see someone, we're really inspired in their presence. It's a bit of a danger of being a leader, is the more you do the inner work, the more you show up as a leader in the world, the more fully expressed you are, and the more people are going to be attracted to you. What happens when people are attracted to you is they're like, wow, if I surround myself with Adam, things will shift. So it's all about over there. It's all over there with Adam, as opposed to like something about them in their own lives. So one, as a leader, we have to be really responsible for the impact of our attraction. And we have to get, that is not going to diminish, but it's going to increase. The more I am in the world, the more I bring my being and fully express it in the world as a leader. The thing that happens with attraction is people get with us, they get super inspired, but they're not actually present to their own possibility. And so they tend to get inspired. And then as they, this is the timeline, as they leave you, the inspiration wanes. And then what tends to happen is they're like, I need another hit of that guy, I guess. I guess that's the problem. I need to go back there. I see this happen a lot at intensives, events, etc. They get back and they're like, oh my God, I'm inspired again. But again, because there's no enrollment in their own possibility, the inspiration fades again, and this time faster. And over time, what happens from this kind of approach is that people, they develop hope fatigue. So they get inspired and then they fall off of that inspiration faster. They don't take the bold actions because as soon as you're out of the picture, the inspiration's gone. They're like, maybe what I saw wasn't real, blah, blah, blah. And ultimately where they're left is disillusioned and resigned. And they sort of feel like, I guess it's possible for Adam, but maybe not for me. Or maybe the problem's just me. And then from there, it's either get another hit or fuck it, it's not going to matter anyhow. So we have to be really cautious about attraction. we also have to be cautious about attraction because it feels fucking great. It's nice to have people attracted to you. It really boosts your ego. It has you feel like, yeah, I'm on the right path. And yeah, people like me. And yeah, people are intimidated or inspired around me. Who wouldn't want to create that? The thing is that if you're committed to generating leadership and developing other people, you are playing a game beyond all of those egoic rewards that attraction causes. And that requires enrollment. And so enrollment is basically when someone is really present to what's possible for themselves. So instead of like, wow, when, wow, I really want to be around Adam and I love what that guy's creating. I'm just using myself as an example. Don't get taken out if you're like, okay, I'm not attracted to him at all. He's a dickhead. First, why are you watching this? But second, that's fine. Hey, Mark. Um, that's what happens with attraction. Oh my God, that's so cool. I love being around Adam. I'm so inspired when I'm in his presence. Whereas enrollment sounds a little bit like, oh my God, I'm present to what I could create. Wow, if I could do that. Wow, I can't believe that there's this possibility I could really make that happen. So enrollment is from within, and it's seeing possibility for yourself as opposed to seeing possibility through someone else. So we're playing the game of enrollment. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. So anytime you're enrolling people, anytime you wanted to, let's say you wanted to let's say you wanted to invite someone to the intensive. You're like, man, there's someone I would love to have in that room with me. You can try it through the approach of attraction, which is like, be really inspiring, tell them about how awesome you are. That's one option. But the much more powerful option is to say to someone, I'm going to broaden this out, I promise, but to say something like, hey, I'm going to this event. I think it's really going to make a difference. The last year or just what I've seen really had an impact. I think you would love it too. Are you interested in a conversation about that? And if they say no, great, easy, nothing else to do. But if they say yes, then the opportunity, first of all, great, they see some possibility. A lot of people get scared at this point because they're like, yeah, but I don't know what to do and I don't know what to see and I don't know what their possibility is. You don't have to worry about that. All there is to do is to get in a conversation with them and get curious about what they want in their lives and then grow that the same way we just talked about growing the possibility tree with Robin's work. So like, what does this person really want in their life? And if the only thing they can bring to the table is, I hate how I'm always late for work, a complaint about what's currently in their life, great. So like, what if that was shifted? How would life be different? What would it be like if every day you showed up and you never had to worry about being late for work ever again? How would your relationship be different? How would your friendships be different? What would your experience as a leader at work be like when that was no longer in the space? So this isn't a parlor trick. This isn't like a trick to make them say yes to something. All it is growing the tree of possibility. And these are branches, in case you didn't get that. And it's more like that because that looks kind of sickly, but just trust me. My arms they're like that. What am I doing? So we're growing the tree of possibility for them, and then all there really is to do is to say like, hey, does this seem like something that would support that to you? And then you can talk about logistics, all of that sort of stuff. So that's the same thing that I just mentioned Robin doing with her work. It's the same thing that I would suggest you do with anything in your life that you want to bring people along with you for. So if you're like, boy, I really want to take on this ceremonial work, but I need my wife to really like say yes to it. The way most of us try to approach that is by asking for permission. And we do kind of a one and done approach. So we're like, hey, honey, I want to do this thing. I think it's going to be, we talk about what we see for ourselves. I think it's going to be great for me. Can I do it? It's going to cost this much money. And if the person's like, yeah, I don't know, maybe not. We're like, oh, okay, I guess it's not for me. And then we hang our head and we walk like Charlie Brown. Instead of really, one, being in the conversation with them, and like two, really getting clear and present for ourselves, like, hey, there's something in it for my partner if I go do this work. Like, hey, honey, I really want to do this work. I'd love to share what I see for myself and what I see for us. Would that be okay? For me, I see like blah, 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 blah. I think it might shift how I'm being. I really feel like I've got a lot of resentment, and this might be a way of like breaking that up a bit. Hey, Ben. And in our relationship, boy, I can see how if I move some of my resentment out of the way, things would be easier. And I would probably be a yes to more things, I'm guessing. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing because I wouldn't be managing all this like I wouldn't be trying to avoid getting resentful because I said yes to a thing. Like none of that would be there, and there might just be more space for me to just be a yes. So I think that would really that might be one of the things that could show up. So again, you're bringing this back to create possibility with this person. I'm not sure really how we got on this top conversation, but I like it. I think it's cool, and I really think that this is such a crucial part of leadership, and really it's a crucial part of life. Like enrollment is a life skill. We can get far by bulldozing people and yeah, right, Mark? We can get far by bulldozing people and knocking them out of the way and all of that sort of stuff, but only so far. And it's a lonely, lonely life. And if we really want to create something, if you have some kind of vision that's like mine, that's like 3 years out, two intensives, 150 people, it's gonna require it's really gonna require your ability to enroll people in that possibility because you can't just do it on your own. I also want to be clear that enrollment is separate from money. What money does, what paying people does, is it lets us get away from, we don't have to enroll people. I could just pay, well, one, I could pay 150 people to come to the intensive with me. That's one thing I could do. I could also pay a team of advertisers to advertise heavily and get people to come on board. None of that requires enrollment. And the same thing is true for like a service professional who wants to develop a thriving practice, a coach, an accountant, a lawyer, a mortician, whatever. You can use money as a way to not have to enroll people. So you can charge a very low rate, which then requires less enrollment on those people. They have to see less as possible because they're giving up less. We're always enrolling people in some possibility in the face of the fact they're going to have to give something up. So like Evan and our members of our leadership team, they have to give something up to play this game with us. It's going to take some time. It's going to demand some energy from them. They're going to have to lean out over the skinny branches. They have to see some possibility that they're stepping into to be worth climbing that wall that's in front of it. Okay. Karen, if you've got those questions, I would love to hear them. Or if anyone else does, thanks for saying that. And I don't know if morticians enroll people, Ben. I don't know anything about that profession. Actually, they do. I had a very good friend of Bay and I's he ran a funeral parlor. Fascinating man. I really miss him. He moved somewhere else because he was so good at what he did that he got an offer he couldn't refuse and had to move away for it. They enrolled him in Leaving Victoria. Well, you commented now, Evan, so it worked. And so a lot of his work was really enrolling people. And part of what he was enrolling them in is people would come to a funeral home and they'd be like, look, I don't want a casket. I don't want this. I just want to be cremated, blah, blah, blah. And he would invite them to consider that it wasn't for them. The funeral, the ceremony, all of that is not for you. You're dead at that point. It's for the people you're leaving behind. And he would help them see like what's the way you want to leave these people? What is the experience you want to give them? Now, some people would just not be interested in that conversation, and Nolan would be great about that. He'd be like, okay, great, no problem. Like, I'm not trying to force you. But for those that were kind of curious and up for that conversation, he was basically enrolling them in the possibility of the immediate legacy they leave behind in their passing. Now, that's a fascinating conversation if you really think about it. Like, wow, we can even play the game of possibility past when we leave this mortal coil. So enrollment is always available. And remember, if people are like a no to you enrolling them, if they're not interested in that conversation, great, drop it. This is not about forcing people to do anything. And to sort of close the loop here, that was how Bay and I started with our leadership team. It was like, look, we're not going to make you do anything. We're committed to filling this program ourselves. We would love to have you play with us, and we would love to support you in practicing new skills and developing this art of enrollment. But if you don't want to do that, that's okay. We're not going to force you to do anything. And that's really what allows enrollment to work, is that oh, hey, Megan, It's that we let go of our attachment to people needing to show up a certain way, and then we can just support them to step further into their lives, support them to see more possibility. Okay, fun conversation. Thanks everyone for sticking around. Um, Boy, get lit, the three stages of growth. Didn't talk about that. Um, Anyone that has comments, either reading this after the fact or, listening, watching to this after the fact, or that we didn't get a chance to hit before we finish up today, put them in the sidebar, and I promise I will come back and I will answer them for you. So, and I want you to know that you really help me when you share, when you ask these sort of questions. I know it's fun to let me ramble and see what's going to come out of my mouth, but it also really benefits all of us when you practice the generous act of asking a question. So thank you everyone that had comments, questions, stuff like that. We will not have live coaching the next 2 Fridays. If you are interested in being a guest, please, thanks Mara. If you are interested in being a guest, please send me a message or post in the comment over there and let us know. We're always looking for more volunteers. It's a great way to practice being in depth as opposed to being in a conversation about depth. And if you want incentive, I'll keep them nameless, but one of the people in our conversation said that after the fact, one of their someone reached out and said, "Hey, I'm ready to start working with you," because they got to see this person being in the deep work themselves. So you can really create, like, I really think it's a powerful tool for enrollment for people to see your vulnerability and your authenticity. So if you need an encouragement, there's one. Check out Get Lit. Make sure that you listen to that podcast, subscribe to that. Please share that with anyone that you're willing to share it to that you think would benefit from the conversation. And if you are interested in a conversation about the intensive, if you're interested or curious about what possibility may be available for you there, reach out. I always have time for those conversations. I've always got time to just be in a conversation where all we do is look at the possibility of your life. And at the end of that conversation, it's fine if you're like, I really want to do this via the intensive, or if you're like, I want to do this some other way, or I just want to sit with it. It's all great. So there's no pressure. It's just a chance for us to be in a really cool, open-ended, blue sky kind of like, what is your possibility conversation. All right, let's have a final sip of tea together. Get that mug ready. Simultaneous sip. Awesome. Love you guys. Have an amazing weekend. Bye for now.